Hey everybody, we're continuing on with lab number 5, part 2, conditional recoding. So where we left off was we were about to do the variable called lesbians and use our gender variable to create that condition. So let's go ahead and start that recode. We got to remember that 1 is male and 2 is female. So we're going to go to transform and then recode into different variables. Remember, we did that recode on birth year earlier, and it always saves the last stuff you did. So we're going to throw that back. We don't need it anymore. And again, the name of the variable is that we want to recode is number of women you've slept with, which is H4SE23. So we're going to kind of go H423. You kind of type into this queue as quick as you can, and it'll try to take you to that part. So I just typed in H4S, and we can go to SE23 a little bit easier. Let's try that again. H4SE. Okay, here we go. H4SE, it's kind of about 3/4 down. H4SE23, right there. Okay, we're going to make this easier in a moment as well. So once you find it, pop it into your queue. Let's go ahead and name this variable lesbians, just to keep things simple. This will be our variable representing lesbians. So make sure you do a name and a label. Then we're going to go into old and new values. Now remember, that keeps all the last stuff that you did if you're doing these labs videos one after another. So you need to go in here and remove all this stuff. Okay. All the old stuff needs to come out because we don't want to use it. This is SPSS trying to be convenient. Sometimes it is not convenient. You just got to take it out. All right. So remember, back with our coding scheme, here's our lab. Our coding scheme is here. We want to make, for the lesbians variable, 1 through 50. If you slept with 1 or more women, you're going to be what we would call a lesbian, but only if you're female. And then if you slept with 0 women, then that doesn't fit our criteria for being lesbian. Now notice on the lab at the bottom, it says write down the coding scheme used to create the variable for lesbians. So you can actually answer that question right now because we've shown you the coding scheme a couple of times. So 0 goes to 0, 1 through 50 goes to 1, system or user missing goes to missing. So you can actually pause and jot that down if you'd like. But again, underneath this area it says, we realize that some individuals are bisexual, and you could create another coding scheme to identify them as well, but for purposes of this exercise, we're keeping this recode simple. So we actually could do a recode on top of a recode on top of a recode and determine who is sleeping with both men and women. But again, we're just trying to teach you the purpose of conditions, so we're keeping things pretty easy. Okay, so that's our coding scheme. Again, it's nice to have it written down so that you don't get confused when you're back in the data. So the value 0, we're going to shift to the value of 0. So again, not who we're interested in. And then this is where we get a little creative. We can do a range of 1 through 50. And that kind of saves us some time instead of having to do each value one at a time. We're going to make that the old value. The new value is going to be 1. So your queue should look like this. Okay, and then again, the last command is system or user missing. If it was blank or non-response, we want it to be system missing in the new variable. Okay, there it is. Now then, we're going to click continue, and then before you hit change, that's kind of a habit, click the if box underneath old and new values. This is where we actually make a condition. So we're going to click this little radio dial that says include if case satisfies condition. So if you are answered a certain way on another question, it's going to do the recode for us. So we're going to look for biosex 4. There's biosex 2. There's biosex 4. And again, all I'm doing on my keyboard is I'm quickly typing bio, B-I-O, and then kind of moving my cursor down. About 2/3 of the way down, you'll see biosex 4. So we're going to pop that into the queue and say biosex 4, hit the equal sign, equals 2, because 2 was the response category that represented female. Okay, so that's our condition. It should look just like that. If biosex 4 equals 2 or female, do this recode SPSS. When you're done creating that condition, click continue, and now you see our condition is actually worded right here next to the if box, just to remind us what we put into place. Click change. Whoop. I'm going to change my name a little bit. I might have created this variable earlier. I'm going to click change and then click OK. All right, and again, remember, whoops, my view is not being as nice today. Remember, when you recode a variable, it just kind of shows you the commands that you did. You have to run a frequency of the variable to see the new stuff you made. Okay, so here's the commands. This actually has a little if-then statement. Do if biosex equals 2, recode this variable H4SE23, which is sleeping with women, in this way into lesbian, end the if command, and then label it like this. It doesn't mean much to you and I, but that's actually just raw command script. Okay, let's actually label our variable before we run a frequency of it. So go back into your data view, scroll all the way down to the bottom where you will see your new variable that you just made, and click on the blue box next to values. We're going to make a value of 0, not lesbian. Okay, we're not saying you're heterosexual, but you're not lesbian for our purpose. Okay, value of 1, you are lesbian, and click add. Then click OK. So now we have labels applied to what the values are inside this variable. Let's run a frequency of this variable just to check it. Remember, we have syntax to help us. So let's do the quick version of this to eliminate some of that extra nasty scrolling we don't like doing. So go ahead and type, or excuse me, just to back up, go to File, File New, and then Syntax. Sorry, I went a little too fast. We have a blank syntax editor. Again, this is just raw commands. Type in the word frequencies, and it'll recognize it. You can just hit return. Then hit variables, space, equal sign, space, and you can put on that H4SE23 variable, and then you can actually type in the lesbian variable. You have to type it in exactly how you named it, and put a period on the end, highlight that whole script, and press the green play button. All right, so here we have the original variable, and now we have the variable we created. So you'll notice we changed the number of cases we had, okay? So you go, hey, it looks like we lost some people. Well, remember, whenever you do a recode, and certainly if you do a recode in a condition, you have to have responses across both those questions in order to perform the change. So if people did not answer the gender question, then we can't recode them. If they didn't answer the number of women, how many are you sleeping with question, then we can't recode them either. So anytime you make changes to data, it has criteria that requires them to respond. So you'll always shrink your total number down a little bit. If you did the recode correctly, you should have 130 lesbians. Okay? That will answer a later question that's on the lab, but we are going to do the same process and now do it for a gay men variable. So here's a shortcut. Scroll back up in your output, double click, and kind of right on that syntax. It's a little hard to grab, but we're going to try doing it anyway. It gets a little finicky sometimes. Okay, if you double click in there, it lets you kind of highlight and grab stuff. So we're going to go in there, we're going to highlight all that stuff, just the recode syntax that starts with do if. So go copy that. Then we're going to go to our syntax editor. You can either go File, New Syntax, or you can use the old one. Just hit a few spaces. You can paste that in there. And then if you want to go ahead and create the gay variable from here, you can, without having to go through transform, recode into different, da-da-da-da-da. So this is, again, a very fast way to work with data. So we just have to make a few changes in here. So our do if condition, we're going to change this to men. So we're going to change this little 2 to a 1. So we're going to say make this change for gay men. only if the person said their gender is male. Now we're going to change the variable from the sleeping with women variable to the sleeping with men variable, which is this one, H4SE17. So how many men are you sleeping with? So we can actually go right in the syntax and type over that H4SE23, change it to a 17, and we're still going to have 0 equaling 0, except we're going to change our range just a little bit. Here's our coding scheme for gay men. It's very similar to the one for lesbian women, except they have a little bit larger number of men that they've slept with. So it's 1 through 75 rather than 1 through 50. So we're going to make that change in here. So missing equals system missing. 1 through 50, we're changing to 1 through 75 and equals 1. Into, now we're going to change this to a new name of our variable called gay or gay men, gays, and if, that looks fine. Then down here on the variable labels line, you can change this to gay, that's the name of our new variable, and then between the little quotes, give it a name. I'm just going to call mine gay. And then this, what's nice is it kind of built in a frequency for us too, so we can check all our stuff. Let's change the H4SE23 again into H4SE17. And we're going to change lesbian into gay. Okay, so actually all we did was just make some little changes to our script. We can run this script and it'll actually run all those commands for us. So if we go in here, we actually have, make our viewer a little bit easier to see here. Right here, here's our 1 through 75 number of male partners you've slept with in the last year. And right underneath it is gay. Okay, so that's our gay variable. If you did it correctly, you actually have 64 gay men. Now, do you notice we didn't label it? It just says zeros and ones. We didn't tell the syntax to do that. So we need to go back into the data view. Notice you now have a new variable at the very bottom of the data set, okay, that says gay. We just click on that invisible blue box on the end and we'll label a 1 as gay and a 0 as not gay. And the reason I'm saying gay versus not gay is I'm saying, well, you know, they could be bisexual as well. Click add and click OK. So if we run that frequency again, you can just put your cursor on your gay variable and run descriptive statistics. It should now have gay and not gay instead of 0 versus 1. Okay, so that will answer another question on your lab. So you've now just used a condition called gender to take another piece of information, how many men are you sleeping with and how many women are you sleeping with, to find out who's gay and who's lesbian in the data set. Okay, so you actually created a variable that didn't even exist in the data set. That's pretty spectacular. And that's what's fun about data, is you can do all kinds of cool stuff with data. All right, so going back to your lab, we were able to get your coding scheme. You found out how many lesbians and how many gays there are in the data set. Now we're going to do another recode. Let's say we're interested in studying homosexual parenthood. Again, this came from a student who wanted to look at parents of children, whether those children coming from homosexual households or heterosexual households were more or less delinquent. Okay, so they were interested to see if there were differences. I could have told them, you know, the research says they're less delinquent, but anyway, they wanted to find out for themselves. So it says, create 2 variables that represent lesbian mothers and gay fathers. This will require another conditional recode. Use the variable H4KK15A for parents. Let's go ahead and just copy and paste that variable name, H4KK15A, right out of the lab. Let's go back to our syntax. Okay, we're just going to give ourselves a few spaces. Let's run a frequency of that variable. Frequencies, variables equals, paste in the name, hit a period, highlight the script, run it. And this is actually a question that says, are